everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. I have a fun card to share with you, a little bit different and a new technique I've never done before. This is a birthday card created using the Tweety Pie stamp set from the Greeting Farm, and I love birds, so I love this card. To begin, I have a regular A2 size folded card and a piece of mixed media cardstock from Strathmore. I have some leftover paper from Michael's in the loose leaf section. I picked this up and it's just some yellow paper with white dots. It's really pretty. And I have a sleeve protector. I picked this up at Staples in a small package of I think about 10. I'm going to use this for the ink smushing. And a piece of vellum as well for my sentiment. I have some circle dies that I use in my Sizzix, and so I've picked out some that I want to use to cut out some holes or peekaboo holes in my card. This is the stamp set I'm going to be using here. This is called Tweety Pie from the Greeting Farm. I've used this in a couple of videos. I really love this stamp set. And I also have this edge trimmer from Martha Stewart. I've had this forever. I think it's so pretty. It creates kind of a doily effect on the edge of a paper. It doesn't work very well with cardstock, but it will be good for the patterned paper that I'm going to use. And then I have some distress inks for ink smushing. I have peacock feather and squeezed lemonade and picked raspberry. I couldn't remember the name of the peacock feather. That one's new for me. And this is my stamp pad Memento Tuxedo Black ink for Copic coloring. So I'm going to do the ink smushing first. I have this water spritzer, and I picked this up at the dollar store. They have travel containers, and that was one of them. So I just use that as the water. And I'm getting a piece of paper towel as well to dry off the cardstock once I'm done. Now, I have the sleeve protector out, so I'm going to put down some of the squeezed lemonade at the top and then come in with peacock feathers and then the picked raspberries. So I'm kind of doing a triangle arrangement. So they're not in a line, they're kind of in a circle, but they're not touching each other. And then using the water spritzer, I'm just going to spritz that really good. You can see the water beating up right away. It looks so neat. And believe it or not, I've never done ink smushing before, but I've watched it on many YouTube videos and admired it. I think it's really pretty. I've always kind of been nervous to try it, but this is my first go. So I put the cardstock down, and you can see the colors, and I re-dipped it, and I found that the colors started to run together. So I was losing that definition of the water spritzes. But I wasn't scared. I kept with it at this point and tried to mix the colors around a little bit. You can see that they're flattening out there. Some of the colors are running together and creating other colors. The blue's running into the yellow a little bit, creating some green, and the pink and blue running together creates a little bit of a purple. So I kind of just went with it, and I've set that aside to dry and cleaned off my sleeve, and then decided to do another round. So I had a base to work with that first layer. And so I thought for this layer I would be a little more sparing on the ink smushing and just get in and get out and get those textures on the card. And so I have this all spritzed up, and I'm going to try laying it down one more time. This is dry, this one, so I did set it aside, and you can see that it picks up the dots right away. It didn't smush them together. I was very careful to pick it up straight and lay it down straight. And then when I brought it up, I seen some extra corner areas that looked a little empty, so I just tapped those very carefully, just laying those edges into what was left on my page protector. So I thought that looked really cool, and I didn't want to lose any of that definition of the ink splatters, so I set that aside to dry as well. Now the page will curl because it's wet, and you have to be careful that the ink doesn't run too much off the edges. But here's the end result when it was dried, and I thought this was so beautiful. It almost reminds me of something that would look nice for an Easter card, like a speckled egg texture. And I love the pastel colors for spring. I thought this was so pretty. I was super happy with how it turned out, and I like that I did the 2 layers because it gave a little more visual dimension. So now I'm going to prepare the bottom part of it. So I want to do the doily hole punch and have that hanging off the bottom, but I don't want my card to be too big. I still want it to stay in that A2 card size. So I want to trim off some of the mixed media cardstock, just enough so this can peek through underneath. So I've decided how far I want it to hang down and how much I need to trim, marking that out with a pencil, just trimming this with my paper cutter so I have the room. So now I'm going to get ready to prepare that doily base. I'm just going to trim off an edge on my paper so I have a nice even edge to work with. And then using my sample, I overlaid this just to see how much I needed to cut off of that piece of paper to do the doily impression. So now I'm ready to do the pattern. This is pretty simple. I find it's easier if you do it upside down. That way you can see where the hole punch is, especially if you're trying to do a repeat pattern. I think there might be a tick mark on the top or something, but I never trust that. And so I always like to do it from the bottom because I can see exactly where those holes are and line up the hole punch. So I just continue along, moving it slowly, inching it over, and making sure that with each new impression I can see a little bit of the old impression so that I can line up those edges. And then eventually when you get to the end, the paper has an extra piece that just breaks off and gives you a free open edge. It does make a lot of mess though, because you get all these little paper holes that seem to get everywhere on your desk. But there's the end result, and I love this hole punch. It is really pretty. And I'm not sure if Martha Stewart still sells these sorts of products, but I do wish I had more. They're so pretty. And so now I'm just seeing how much of the paper I want to cover and how much is going to hang out and peek underneath my card. So what I want to do is trim off the front part of my card base because I don't want that sitting behind my yellow paper. So I found a measurement in between where I need to glue the yellow paper to the back of my mixed media cardstock and have it still sit to the right alignment at the bottom of my card base. So you can see my front cover is a little bit shorter. And so just making sure I have enough room. I have my cardstock at the top, and then I have the doily hanging down at the bottom, that doily trim. And so now I'm just seeing how it's positioning and everything's looking good. So I'm going to run some tape along the very lowest part of the edge of my mixed media cardstock there. And I'm just going to line this up on my paper trim and then push it into place. And then I'll trim off the edges just using my paper cutter. It's handy, it's on my desk, so I'll just quickly grab that. You could also use a ruler and an X-Acto knife with a cutting mat. I'd probably normally do that, but I just had that handy. Now I'm ready to do the sentiment part. So I want to put this on vellum so that I'm not covering up too much of that ink smooshing pattern that I created, and then this way it can shine through. I want to make sure that I cut a piece just wide enough or tall enough to hold the sentiment, so I don't want it too big. And my sentiment is kind of tiny as well, so I just need a small strip. And so now I've positioned out my circle templates that I want to cut out for my windows. And I just want to make sure that they're the right size and the position and the composition is okay with what I've done. So I've got everything sort of roughly placed where I think I want it and just nudging things until I'm happy with the layout. And so I'm going to cut out my windows here. And so just taking Post-it tape, I'm going to put those dies down and run this through my Sizzix Big Kick machine. And so here I have it all ran through the machine, and just popping out those circles, super easy. And so now I'm ready for stamping. I'm going to use Nina Solar White cardstock. This is my favorite to color with Copic markers on. It blends really nicely. I want to stamp out my images, but I want to make sure that I leave a lot of room around them because I want to cover the windows that I'm going to put these in. I don't want to close crop them. I want to make sure that they fit completely in the window. So I laid my mixed media cardstock over top of the little bird to color it, just so when I was picking my Copic colors I could balance things out and make sure that the colors I was selecting matched the card and felt like they were in the right places. So you can see the colors on the left side of the screen that I used, and these are really inspired by the colors in the card in the distress inks that I chose. So I wanted to keep a balance of those, and overall this is a very harmonious card. It's not got too many contrast colors or too many spot colors. It's all very even level visually. And these are small items to color. It's not very hard to color them, so I was able to show them in real time and not give you too much of a lengthy video. So you can see the process of what I'm doing here. And so now that I have that colored, I'm just going to finish up some final touches on the little birdie, and then I'm going to move over to the hearts that will sit in the two smaller windows. And I'm going to color the hearts different. I'm not going to make them the same. Just depending on where the ink smooshing was on the upper layer, I'm just balancing out or counterbalancing with the opposite colors in my color spectrum on the left. And so when I cut these out, I'm just making sure that I have enough room on the edges that they can sit behind their window and not fit. That make sure that they do fit all in the window for each one. I'm putting down some two-way tape just to hold them in place. I'm going to stick that to the front. Once I get them lined up in the window, just press them down into place. And I found this to be the easiest way. It was easy for me to line them up and then just quickly push them down, and I didn't have to worry about fumbling with tape after I had them positioned or trying to get a big tape roller out, and which is super sticky. So if I did mess up on the positioning a little bit, the two-way tape does give you a little bit of flexibility to wiggle it around a bit. So I'm just coming in with the B60 and creating a shadow as well, just so those elements are grounded. Now, to do the sentiment, I'm going to take that vellum and I'm going to run some peacock feathers across the back part of it, just to bring in some more of that color. I really want this color to be, or this card to be balanced visually, nothing too stark or different. I'm going to use a VersaFine ink because I love how crisp it stamps. This ink is kind of a love-hate though, because it does take forever to dry, and I found that it didn't completely dry on the vellum as much as I wanted it to. I left it for, I think, probably an hour. I walked away from the card and just left it, and it still wasn't 100% dry, so I'm not sure that I would use it on vellum again, but it didn't completely rub off. So now I'm going to put a little bit of glitter on the end just to decorate this sentiment flag. I put a bead of craft glue that I dropped the edge of the sentiment in, and then just using a folded piece of paper, I've got some glitter along the center seam, and it makes a nice even line, which is nice. So I'm going to run my tape roller on the back of the sentiment here and just stick it to a base, its own base of white. I decided to bring this in at the last minute. It just felt like it was getting lost on that page without a little bit of support. So I opted for white because I do have white in the windows as well, so that matched overall. So now I'm just going to trim off the edge and make sure it's flush. Now I'm ready to attach the card. I'm going to use my tape roller and put the tape on the card base. Because the front of the card and the card base front are two different lengths because I trimmed it off, I have to match these on the folded edge, which is preferred because I always want to make sure that that side's flush. I can always trim the other sides, but I can't trim the folded edge. So here's a look at the finalized card I'll put together. A super easy card and fun, and a bit of a new technique for me, so I really enjoyed making this card. And here's a look at the final result. I love those colors and the textures that I got, the visual textures with that ink smooshing. I'm definitely going to have to try this again. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified as I post more videos, and it does help my channel. Thank you so much for watching.